A blessed day with you, class. For today's video discussion, we are about to discuss accounting equation and double entry bookkeeping, which will be your ultimate guide in your adventurous journey across the accounting cycle. So, fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be another bumpy but fruitful learning ride with accounting. To start with, kay accounting, there are 5 elements na kinakailangan nating tandaan. First 3 elements are yung main components of the accounting equation, which is assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. Kung saan, in layman's term, kapag sinabing assets ay ito ang mga ari-arian ng company, debt or utang naman kapag liabilities at panghuli ay equity or sa madaling salita, kapital ng business owner. So, kung mapagtatanta natin, ang ari-arian pala ng isang business entity, assets ay maaaring sinurse out mula sa utang, liabilities at maging sa capital or equity, in which overall it defines how well of the entity is as per its financial position. Ma'am, lagi po bang balanse dapat yung assets sa sum of liabilities and equity? Yes po, it is an absolute rule na assets is always equated to the sum of utang at kapital. Pakatandaan din pong mabuti na ang equity ay mayroong 4 na general components, 2 pataas, 2 pababa, expenses or gastos, at withdrawals ng may-ari ay may decreasing trend or effect sa equity. Kapag naman investment sa kumpanya o di kaya'y nagkaroon ng sales at revenues, pabulusok pataas or add naman sa capital. Karugtong nito ay ang 4th and 5th elements that quite measure the financial performance of the entity, which are the revenues at costs and expenses. Wherein, if revenues is greater than costs and expenditures, you will arrive at net income, samantalang loss naman syempre kapag mas malaki ang gastos ng kumpanya over sa napagbentahan nito. Ma'am, paano po pagbalanse naman ang parehong accounting elements? Therefore the financial performance will be considered as break-even, tabla gastos sa revenues, walang kinita wala ring loss, the bottom line is zero. Whereas, the main goal of every business is indeed to maximize the revenues with the objective to minimize naman ang ating costs and expenditures. Let us now tackle the concept of double entry bookkeeping. To start with, what is bookkeeping? In its strict sense, it is a business activity of recognition and classification of financial data in chronological order concerning transactional business economic events. As illustrated, there are 2 common types of bookkeeping system, then why it is much acceptable to use and refer as per double entry type across accounting cycle. As it was devised by Luca Pacioli, it has been assumed that there is duality of economic transactions as per its effect to the operations and financial position of the business. Ika nga, papunta na po tayo sa exciting part ng debit at credit, in which we should always keep in our mind that this duo should always be equal to each other. Ma'am, sa journal entry sa nabanggit ninyo pong double entry bookkeeping, pwede po bang parehong debit or parehong credit lang meron? Hindi po, parating tigis ang debit at credit at the minimum per se. So probable po na higit sa dalawa ang debit or credit, as long as mayroon na tig-isa at again balanse po parati aligned with the accounting equation of assets equals utang at kapital. To summarize, these are the benefits and limitations of utilizing the double entry bookkeeping. Let us now proceed to the concepts of account, debit and credit. In accounting, we take into summarization of economic transactions and events that will probably and certainly affect the 5 elements recently discussed: the assets, liabilities, equity, revenues and expenses with the help of the device called account. So, kaya talagang first thing to pop up in your mind talaga pag accounting ay account syempre at ang duo nating sina debit at credit. As illustrated, parati po bang nasa kaliwa si debit and credit sa kanan? The answer is a big yes po. To further elaborate, we have 3 main types of account. Kapag tagged as real accounts, it actually pertains to 3 elements of accounting equation: the asset, utang at kapital. Itong mga permanent or balance sheet accounts ay considered real as it will never be closed or zero out, every end of the accounting period, every closing of books of accounts, be it monthly, quarterly, semi or annually. As per nominal, temporary or income statement accounts naman, it include the revenues and expenses. Just to add up, ang withdrawals din po is being closed at the end of the period along with this nominal revenue and expenses. Another general classification ay ang contra account. These are in nature the opposite ng isang certain related account. It somehow tends to decrease the value of the main account, katulad na lamang ng building kapag as if na luma, nag-decrease in terms of valuation, may contra account po tayong nire-recognize, known as accumulated depreciation. Please take note as well the 4th account type, the adjunct, which is kabaligtaran ng contra account. Kumbaga, just to simplify, halimbawa if there is a discount as if in a liability, such diskwento as per accounting ay contra account while any premiums or add-on to its value ay adjunct naman per se sapagkat pinatataas niya ang outstanding balance or value ng main account. And with that, to arrive at the account balance, kindly remember that the difference between kaliwa debit total balance and the credit total balance kanan ay ang ultimate outstanding balance ng isang specific account, be it an asset, liability, equity, revenues or expenses. In relation to this, here is the summary of the trend sa kung kailan ba ang isang account ay to be debited or siya namang credit. Halimbawa, the company purchased the building on cash. The source of acquired building is the cash outlay, hence credited. The building is the actual destination, kinapuntahan ng outflow of cash, therefore debited. But using the limited concept of debit and credit rule as tabulated, upon purchase of such building, yung cash natin ay bumaba, and cash in nature ay ari-arian ni entity or asset, to reiterate, cash bababa, asset, therefore debit or credit. Again, cash should be credited, and as the building increases on the other hand, kasi nagkaroon ka ng ownership, therefore itong ating building naman ay yaong i-debit natin as building, being an asset na increasing ang trend. Isang debit, isang credit, equal, so swak na ang iyong journal entry. Just keep striving class as we have more transactions to analyze and dealt with, in our succeeding online discussions. And to fully grasp all the accounts tailored in the entire accounting cycle of an entity, chart of accounts has been always used with initial code of 1 for asset, 2 for liabilities, 3 for equity, 4 as per revenues and 5 for expenses. So, to speak, if the account 1001 has been debited, what should come to your mind is that it is an asset as it starts with numeral of 1, hence convenience is being endorsed upon using of chart of accounts. Let us now move on with typical accounts the business organizations are using, as per debit and credit, double entry bookkeeping of economic events. For the asset accounts, mainly categorized as short-term or current assets, which has 12-month operating cycle in general. We have cash. In terms of cash kay accounting mayroon tayong 3 components, it could be cash on hand, the paper and bills. Cash in bank, generally in savings and checking accounts. And lastly, the cash fund, those are the funds appropriated for short-term purposes such as tax, salary and small amount or petty cash fund. Utang ni customer na salitaan lang when it comes to negotiation, as if I referred to us under accounting as AR, accounts receivable. Next is notes receivable, almost similar to AR, except for having an issuance of promissory note. Katulad na lang with the usual transact of students with BSU, halimbawa there are miscellaneous and or tuition payable by the students, usual setup hindi ba? If cannot settle in full, the debtor, yung may utang, which is student will issue promi to BSU, the creditor payee. Ma'am alin po ang mas secured, AR or NR? As recently described, it is the notes receivable that is much established and secured as it is a written pledge from a client. Another ari-arian na ating pahahapyawan ay ang inventories. Under accounting, inventory classification depends on business operational type, be it merchandising or a manufacturing one. If buy and sell or trading, pakatandaan we have only one inventory, which is again quite called merchandising inventory. Let's say, buy and sell ng kotse. So, therefore, your merchandising inventory is the second-hand cars. But as per manufacturing, we have the raw materials those purchased, flour, harina for baking. Work in process includes those tinapay na namasa na pero still not yet already baked, which is hindi pa fully baked and cooked. And the finished goods, those bread ready for sale. Figuratively speaking, raw materials ay maihahalin tulad sa mga grade 12 students na kakagraduate pa lamang, ROICA for college level of studies. Work in process are those currently enrolled as college students, na in progress pa lang to get their diplomas like you, and finally, those graduated students na ready nang sumabak sa hamon ng corporate world at ng buhay, which somehow portrays the finished goods. Another short-term asset to discuss with is the prepaid expenses. Best example of this ay yung product na nag-boom especially ngayong pandemya, the prepaid insurance. Pinakasimpleng halimbawa rin ay yung iyong prepaid load, wherein you prepay, una bayad before you consume the actual benefits of that certain asset. Let us now tackle the non-current or long-term assets that the company could possess mainly for production, rental, in supply or transportation and office purposes, which is quite called property, plant and equipment. This asset type is referred as fixed as it provide future economic benefits for at least more than a year, which include line items such as land, building and machines. As mentioned in our previous discussion, due to wear and tear, obsolescence, frequent usage or pagkaluma in layman's term ng ating PPE, under accounting, we need to recognize depreciation, which will be accumulated across periods, hence pinababa yung value ng ating PPE, coined as a contra asset account. Which is kapag pinagbangga natin yung two accounts na ito, PPE less accumulated depreciation, you'll arrive at the book or carrying value ng ating mga fixed assets. So, we are done with the basic asset accounts, let us now proceed with the liability-related accounts. Utang na salitaan pero tayo, as company ang may debt or liability, bumili ng raw materials halimbawa, inutang, therefore, ito ay i-recognize natin as accounts payable of our business. So, this AP includes liability related to our entity's supplier. As per accrued expenses payable, these are the other payables ni company that are non-related to suppliers. To illustrate, utilities ni company hindi pa bayad, maging ang sweldo sa ilang araw sa katapusan, it could be referred specifically as utilities and salaries payable respectively. And generally speaking could be both classified as accrued expenses payable. Another instance that could create utang at our backend being a corporate entity, is when our clients gave a certain amount of money in exchange of our services and goods na hindi pa natin na i-render or na i-deliver. As if earnest money / down payment or could be in full payment. Una bayad before serbisyo, una bayad before deliver ng goods, dahil maaaring may certain date or period in terms of months or even a year depende sa contract of service as if. Again, ang tawag po natin rito ay mga hindi pa kinikitang-kita or unearned revenue. Due to prudence or conservatism na do not overstate your assets, nor understate your liabilities and accountabilities. Kaya hindi pa siya outright actual income or revenues as recognized. Kung maaanalisa natin, those mentioned na liabilities are payable usually within a year or less kaya sila ay categorized as current or short-term liabilities. Idagdag pa rito halimbawa yung loans payable na short-term ng ating kumpanya to a certain bank. Ma'am, paano po kung utang ni company ay negotiated hence payable for more than a year instead? So dyan na po papasok yung tinatawag nating long-term utang or non-current liabilities. We are almost at the end of our online learning, konting sikap at tiyaga pa kay accounting. So, to resume, we have here the equity accounts. Dalawang bagay, capital as the permanent account again, ang formula nito ay beginning capital plus profits or net income. Minus any contra equity withdrawals made na parati nating kin-close at the end of the accounting period. Kaya kapag tayo ay nag-review ng FS presented under the statement of financial position or balance sheet, anumang balance sa capital ay assumed always as the ending capital. After closing related profit, withdrawals and other equity transactions. As per revenue or income generating activities, we have mainly two types, service revenues and sales in general. These are inflows of our company when it comes to economic benefits. Again just to recall, under our RP, revenue recognition principle, paid man or hindi ni clients yung services at goods, basta't na-i-deliver or na-i-render na, always credit, recognize such outright revenue. Could be delivery, accounting, professional or other type of service revenue, or sales kapag trading. Para mas madaling maunawaan, puhunan as if sa service revenue earned ay tinatawag nating direct costs. Kapag under trading or manufacturing, nagbenta ng tinapay, yung puhunan roon ay tinatawag nating cost of sales. In which part ng cost of sales natin yaong mga purchases na related sa goods that have been sold already, to align, yung mga halaga ng ating baking ingredients. And for our fifth and final accounting element, the expenses. What is actually being presented are those expenditures na basic in general. Salaries and wages, ma'am ano po ang pinagkaiba? Kapag contract or fixed-based, it relates to salaries. Samantalang wage earners naman yung mga naka-piecemeal or daily rate, kung hindi pumasok ay no pay. Next are the utilities, usually includes cost of consumption of fuel, electricity, telecommunications, internet and water. Related expense as to using a certain space, building, or even equipment relates to rental expense. Office supplies expense, yung ballpen, stapler, bond paper na for the sake of office and admin-related endeavors, these are correspondingly being incurred. Expired portion of prepaid insurance naman ay from asset kanina as prepaid expenses will be recognized thereafter as outright insurance expenses. Halimbawa, nagbayad ka ng 1-year health insurance. Every month na nagdaraan, the company transfer the portion nung binayad from prepaid expenses into actual insurance expense. Bakit po? Kasi it is deemed consumed, utilized or there is no benefit at all dahil may nakalipas ng isang certain period covered by the insurance itself. Depreciation expense includes the portion as per decrease in value of a non-current or PPE assets in the current period only. Halimbawa, nagde-depreciate ang ating asset every year by 10,000. Each and every 10,000 ay will be recognized as annual depreciation expense. Ma'am, paano kung 2 taon na pong nag-depreciate ang ating assets, therefore po may 20,000 depreciation expense na for the second year? Hindi po, still every year fixed po tayo na 10,000 unless may revaluation at changes as per estimate. Yung 20,000 na analysis natin is will be categorized not in depreciation expense but in accumulated depreciation. Accumulated ibig sabihin total. In short, every year depreciation expense is 10,000. After 2 years, accumulated depreciation is 20,000 pesos in total. After 5 years, depreciation expense is still 10,000 annually samantalang ang ating accumulated depreciation ay 50,000 na. Next in line ay interest or finance costs. Siyempre, hindi tayo pauutangin ng libre lang ng ating mga creditors. Laging may katapat na cost of financing or interest expenses. Ika nga save the best for the last, so we have here the bad debts expense, silent letter boy or B po ito pag binasa. This bad debts expense or known also as uncollectible accounts or doubtful accounts. Mga kaduda-dudang accounts na probable nang hindi makolekta ng ating collection department, with consultation of accounting and managerial department. Ay may portion roon na de-recognize na natin mula sa AR or even NR into the bad debts expense. As if na mali pala nating pautangin itong kliyente, walang balak na kasi magbayad na talaga, so that's where the concept of bad debts expense has been coined. And that's it, pansit. Always remember that all of the assets discussed should be equated, equal sa lahat ng utang or liabilities plus equity. Wherein equity could be derived from beginning capital plus investments and revenues less expenses and withdrawals. This will be the final point that we will be discussing as we wrap our today's online discussion of accounting equation and related double entry bookkeeping.